Hello everyone, this is the channel about engines. Today we're going to take apart this engine. This is a Mercedes-Benz 441. This engine was taken out of this kind of vehicle. It's an unusual vehicle. Basically, it's equipped for transporting horses. It has a box body with stalls for 5 or 6 horses. I don't know how to say it exactly. One of my subscribers from St. Petersburg contacted me. We agreed on the repair and he drove here on his own. The vehicle is over the inspection pit. We've removed the engine. It's from 1995 and the exact mileage of the engine is 1,600,000 kilometers. And this is the first repair, the first major overhaul. I don't know, maybe something was done there. I saw some sealant on the oil pan and here on the front cover looks like there was sealant, or maybe it was leaking from the oil pan. Well, it was leaking. They did something at night. But this is the first major overhaul. Also, the engine has never been removed from the car. There were so many problems even while removing it. For example, they couldn't even remove the starter. These nuts, you can see, the nuts were so rusted. I don't know how many years they haven't been unscrewed. This wire here is almost completely rotted. You can see everything is oxidized. But all of this will also need to be done. For example, if you look at the engine, it's already, you could say, almost clean. First it was washed with a pressure washer, then I cleaned it here in the workshop with a wire brush for several hours and blew it out. It was all covered with a layer of dirt several centimeters thick. But then some was left here in the valley and there's just no way to clean it out. So when I take off the intake manifold, you'll be able to see what condition it's in. For example, here behind the pump, I'll show you the condition of the pump right away. But I think the whole engine will be in about the same condition. Also about the rust, you can see here that it's coming off the head from the manifold in layers. Somewhere around here on this side is the decompression valve. You can see this tube here, it's so rusted that even the bolt has lost its edges. The tube itself, I don't know, maybe something will have to be replaced. Here, for example, we have a pipe. The antifreeze comes from the heat exchanger. You can see it's also all corroded. It's coming off in layers. Well, in general, the whole engine is in this condition. Here you can see a crack on the exhaust manifold on the pipe. Here, for example, I removed the gearbox and you can see everything here is covered in oil. It's literally running in streams. I don't know if it's oil leaking from the gearbox or maybe it's the engine's rear crankshaft seal leaking. Well, in general, the whole engine is in about this condition. So, what's the reason for removing it? But besides the fact that it's already at the end of its life, you can see what condition it's in. The customer also has another problem. The coolant is disappearing and basically there's emulsion in the oil on the filler neck, on the dipstick and somewhere else. So the customer called him and he said that there's a 95% chance that the coolant is leaking drop by drop from under the cylinder liners. And while the oil is hot, it manages to evaporate. And these deposits remain on the valve covers. Let's say we should see them now on the filler neck, as I mentioned, and so on, maybe on this cover too, where condensation forms. And while the customer was driving, there were about 600 kilometers left, and he said that oil started getting into the antifreeze as well. So when they drained the antifreeze, it was all like that too. Also an emulsion. Oil under pressure got into the antifreeze, everything got mixed together. So for example, here I was draining from the heat exchanger, unscrewing this plug, draining the remaining antifreeze from the engine. And at first antifreeze started to flow out here as well. So we ended up with the same mess I had before. There was a video about repairing an engine from a Gazelle OMZ 275. And there too, the reason for taking it apart was that oil and antifreeze got into the engine. And everything got mixed together. It turned into such a mess. I don't even know now what I'll need to clean all this with. I'll wash the block, including the water jacket and cylinder heads. I'll clean the whole system. As for washing it right on the car, like the radiator and so on, we'll still have to think about what to do with that. Well, for example, while I was cleaning with a brush, I accidentally hit here a bit. The air tube came off. Also the decompression valves on cylinders 5 and 3. So what's my task now? As usual, I tear it down for inspection. We do some things ourselves and we send some things to an outside organization. The block will probably 100% go for machining. The heads, connecting rods, and fuel system will go for inspection. The starter and generator will also be sent for inspection, and possibly for repair later. Well, basically everything as usual. So, I'm starting the disassembly. They start from the top with all sorts of pipes, hoses. I remove the clutch basket, then the manifolds, the turbo, the starter, the pulley in the front, the pump oil filters. In general, I take apart everything, inspect the pistons and shafts for defects. So that's the scope of work we have. Let's get started. Not all the filters are covered in this emulsion. I think the oil was already bypassing the filters, meaning the bypass valve was working. It's installed right here, and the oil was already going through unfiltered. Since everything is fully in this emulsion, you can see it clearly, right? So there's already a lot of antifreeze in here. Well, although this filter, the one that's a bit higher up, is still more or less okay. So I took off the cylinder heads, and what can I say? Basically, the wear isn't that bad. There is some wear, but it's just a few tenths of a millimeter. If you really wanted to, you could reuse the old liners, but I would recommend at least replacing the liners. The liners, of course, the seals under the liners, and the piston rings. I'm not sure about the pistons yet. I need to take them apart and check. So the cylinder diameter is 128 mm. I thought maybe there were engines with a 130 mm diameter. And the engine model we have is 445.920. So it's a 441 engine, but specifically the 445.920 model. I've had something similar on my channel before. There was also a 445 engine there. So I removed the cylinder heads. You can tell from the cylinder heads that they've already been removed before. They were on a surface grinder. I don't know when that was, how long ago. I'll check with the customer. He did something with the car. No, in any case, I'll be disassembling the cylinder heads, checking the condition of the guides, bushings, valves, and replacing the valve stem seals. And most likely, they'll also be resurfaced. Of course, we'll see what condition they're in. So, about the valve covers. When I was taking it apart, I showed it on camera, but now I want to show it in more detail and focus on this point so we can see how much emulsion there is. It's not just a small deposit here, there is a real buildup. As we can see, there's about a centimeter of this buildup in each valve cover. So this means that coolant has been getting into the oil for a very long time. And here, as I mentioned, where the condensate collects, in this spot are all these deposits. They're so thick that they don't even move. It's already become like wax. So now I'm removing the high pressure fuel pump. I set the mark. We can see it matches the movable and fixed marks. And I also checked the flywheel. I made my own mark here as well. On the flywheel we have 5 degrees. I've also already disassembled the compressor. Here the connecting rod is one piece with no bolts. And it is removed through basically this support. And that's how it twists out. I also removed the pressure plate. And here on the casing I see these kinds of marks. So at some point something broke apart here. Maybe the springs from the disc fell out. Maybe the pressure plate came apart, broke apart. And we can see that there are these kinds of dents here on the casing. And I also want to show you one more thing. Right here. I don't know. It looks like it got clogged with dirt. But if we look from the compressor side, we'll see that it's broken off here. Выломан алюминий. I'm not sure if you can see it on camera. So, and it turns out that the oil from the compressor gets through this hole. Well, basically to the flywheel and the pressure plate. Now I'll remove the flywheel and check the condition of the oil seal. But most likely the oil is also coming through this brake. We have a hole going all the way through here. So this will need to be welded. And I also want to show how much dirt there is. This is the place that couldn't be cleaned. Here we have brushes and filters, so we cleaned as much as we could. And under the pulley you can see there's a layer of dirt like this. The thickness of this layer is several centimeters. So you can't really wash it off. I just scraped it off with a brush. Now I can clean it up a bit. I'll clean all of this now, and then I'll keep disassembling. And we can also see that the oil pan is coated with red sealant. So as I mentioned, it looks like the oil pan was removed before. We'll see. Once we take it apart, it'll be clear what year the bearings were replaced, or if they were ever replaced at all. So I'm removing the fuel pump. I'm cleaning up a bit here. I'm disassembling it further by turning the engine upside down. With the oil pan up, I'm removing the oil pan pistons crankshaft and camshaft. Oh well, now I'll also remove the starter. I'll remove the flywheel right away. I'm removing it. I've removed the flywheel and we can see that the oil seal here is leaking. It's practically pouring out. Well, and the oil seal here is already rough. It's hardened, cost ya. Alright, let's check the bearings. The connecting rod bearings are actually in pretty good condition, but you can see they were replaced in 2011. August 2011 MIBA bearings, standard size. So this engine has been repaired after all. The oil pan was sealed with gasket maker and the front cover was installed. So, at the very least, the connecting rod bearings were replaced. We'll also check the main bearings now. Of course, as for the main bearings, judging by how the engine turns over, it seems that the main bearings are in very bad condition. In any case, we'll be replacing the bearings. We take out the pistons and check the condition of the pistons and piston rings. But judging by the second cylinder, the pistons are in working condition. It's possible that we'll even keep these same old pistons. We'll just replace the piston rings, that's all. Now the main bearings look worse. It seems like there was a lack of oil or something. Or maybe this kind of wear was caused by antifreeze. Well, let's keep looking. We see that the bearing is MIBA 2 and it's standard size. I don't see the year of manufacture. So it turns out that in 2011 the engine had a complete overhaul. So the client has incorrect information. He said the engine wasn't repaired. Again short. We can see this kind of wear. Most likely it's because antifreeze was getting into the oil. Yes, also here it says 0911, which means it's from 2011. In 2011, the engine was repaired and both main and connecting rod bearings were replaced. Most likely they installed a new piston assembly. Right. And apparently the liners, or rather the seals under the liners. Well, basically it's been 15 years since 2011. Basically that's pretty good for the seals that were installed during the repair. But in any case, our engine is done. It failed specifically because of the seals under the liners. So the block will definitely go for machining. Here by the bearing shell at the saddle under the main bearing shell, you can see that the shell was already moving there. There's already wear. Also, here is the thrust area of the cap. We have wear here as well. You can even feel it with your finger. So, in any case, we'll be machining this. Machinists machine this area here. They also machine the cap, setting it a bit lower, and they take this spot as 0. Then they bring it back to size. Main saddles, main bearings. We can also see the bearing shell isn't tight. It's loose inside. It moves just as easily. So I've knocked out the cylinder liners. The cylinder liners came out easily because the rubber isn't holding them anymore. The rubber is completely compressed, fused and deformed. And since the antifreeze was apparently good, there are no deposits there. The cylinder liners popped out easily. So looking at the rubber, we can see how it got folded. Its profile is rectangular. That means it's no longer elastic. It's already hard and deformed. So that's 100% antifreeze was leaking because of the rubber seals. Here, one of the rubber seals is completely corroded. Here you can see. So our engine failed specifically because of the rubber seals, So the engine is disassembled. Let's sum up. Basically, the engine is in pretty good working condition. If, for example, the rubber seals hadn't let the antifreeze leak, I think it would have kept running for years. In the future, there was a chance that the main bearings would have spun, meaning they would have gotten really loose here. There's wear on the bearings, and they could have just spun, welded themselves to the crankshaft, and then damaged the engine block. I'll say that this kind of thing happens quite often. Other than that, the engine is in pretty good working condition. So, what are we going to do with it? Well, first of all, obviously the block needs to be machined. The main bearing saddles definitely need machining. The cylinder head mounting surface, I don't know, we'll need to clean it and take a look. In general, it's in pretty good condition, so I don't know yet. We'll see as we go. So that's what concerns the block. Next, as for the crankshaft, at first glance, there don't seem to be any issues. So I'll just polish it. And standard bearings will be installed as well. It's still the original one, as we can see. 1995 June, summer of 1995. And I also see that it looks like this front thrust washer was replaced at some point. It was probably overheated pretty badly. It turned blue. But in any case, I'll be removing it and installing a new one. So, there are no issues with the camshaft either. Everything's great. So, the cylinder liners need to be replaced. I knocked them out. Didn't even try to pull them out. I definitely won't be reinstalling these liners. They're worn out. I'll tell the customer that new liners are absolutely necessary. Here, for example, I wiped the rubber ring so you can see its cross section. It's completely rectangular hard and not elastic. Next, about the pistons, most likely we'll keep these pistons. There, possibly if any material is machined off the block cylinder head mating surface, I'll take that same amount off the piston crowns too. Then we'll install new piston rings and most likely we'll keep these pistons. All the bearings need to be replaced, both main and connecting rod bearings. The connecting rods will be sent for inspection. As for the cylinder heads, as I mentioned earlier, I'll clean and disassemble them. Possibly the guides will need to be replaced, maybe the valves too. There's also this third valve, the decompression valve, which often causes problems. It can damage the heads, but here is the valve stem. There's no guide bushing, so the valve moves directly in the head. I'll inspect the heads for defects before deciding what to do with them. The fuel injection equipment is being sent for inspection. The injectors are here and the pump is over there. The turbocharger will also be sent for inspection. Actually, no, the turbocharger won't be sent for inspection. The customer has a new turbocharger. He bought it a few years ago. So we'll have a new turbocharger. The turbocharger is already available. Well, as for the rest, I don't know what else to say. The pump repair kit. I showed how the pump is loose. Everything also needs washing and cleaning. Here, something needs to be done with these and the exhaust hoses. Either weld them or maybe get new ones. The clutch definitely needs a new disc. And as for the rest, I don't know yet. I'll take a look. Maybe the pressure plate and flywheel will need to be replaced too. That's what the engine's condition is like. Honestly, I was expecting something much worse, since the customer said this engine has never been repaired since 1995. So, I think that if coolant is leaking, then the bearing should be red, eaten away. There might be problems with the output shaft, problems with the camshaft, but as we can see, everything is basically fine here. And this engine was repaired in 2011, so that was 15 years ago. So from 1995 to 2011, it was about 15 or 16 years before the repair. And now another 15 years have passed, and we're repairing this engine again. I hope that after my repair, it will last at least another 15 years. So this is our first episode about disassembling this engine. There will be several more episodes about assembling this engine. One or two, depending on how it goes, but installation back on the vehicle, and then we'll start it up on the vehicle. That's it. I'll finish this video about disassembling this engine here. Thank you all for watching. Good luck to everyone. Goodbye.